The Road to Socialism and the New World Order, Part 3, by Dennis Lawrence Cuddy, Ph.D. Pope Paul VI had already written Populum Progressio, March 26, 1967, calling for a new judicial order, and stated, "As we told the United Nations General Assembly in New York, your vocation is to bring not just some peoples, but all peoples together as brothers. Who can fail to see the need and importance of thus gradually coming to the establishment of a world authority capable of taking effective action on the judicial and political planes? Delegates to international organizations, public officials, gentlemen of the press, teachers and educators, all of you must realize that you have your part to play in the construction of a new world order." Then, in 1990, Iraq's invasion of Kuwait offered the United Nations a good opportunity with George Bush and the establishment to begin enforcement of the New World Order. Curiously, the ruthless Saddam Hussein released a large number of American hostages who, if he had placed them at key targets around Iraq, may have prevented the Allied attack against his country, freeing Bush to begin military action on which would facilitate the beginning of the New World Order. On February 5, 1998, President Clinton would say, "Would the Iraqi people be better off if there was a change in Iraqi leadership? I certainly think they would be, but that is not what the United Nations has authorized us to do." But there was still a great need to establish a clear precedent for the United Nations intervention in the internal affairs of a country in the form of nation building. This was despite the fact that Article 2, Section 7 of the UN Charter states, "Nothing contained in the present charter shall authorize the United Nations to intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state or nation." Somalia in 1992 looked like the best prospect for the United Nations nation building, but the warlords there had other ideas, and the next best proposed prospect was Haiti in 1994. When President Clinton addressed the American public about the possibility of our leading a multinational force to invade Haiti, he said that there would be carrying out of the will of the United Nations. For Clinton to order American troops to prepare to fight and die in Haiti was curious, given that in his letter about 25 years ago explaining his position on Vietnam, he indicated that no American should be asked to fight unless there was a direct and immediate threat to the national security of the United States itself. President Clinton's reason for proposing military action in Haiti were also curious. He said that we needed to remove the dictators there but restore democracy, and cited the closeness of Haiti to the mainland U.S. But why didn't liberals take the same position regarding Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua, instead of refusing to even help the Contras who weren't asking the U.S. to invade? Next, President Clinton's point to all the atrocities by the military dictators in Haiti, but that raises the question of why he supports most favored nation status for China after the atrocities by the dictators there. And why is the United States backing the defrocked priest Artside, given his support of brutal necklacing and his undemocratic actions concerning judges and the parliament in Haiti after his election? Clinton said it's because he got 70% of the vote of the Haitian people. Does that mean Clinton believes Richard Nixon should have stayed in power despite what he did because Nixon had received the overwhelming vote of the American people over George McGovern? Of course, on September 18th, a deal was made that avoided a military invasion of Haiti. American forces would be involved in a peacekeeping operation there, though, and therefore still be at risk. However, supposing that everything went smoothly, what actually happened and what was the message sent around the world? The message was that if a military dictator removed a democratically elected government, looted and pillaged this country, raping the people and shedding their blood everywhere, the worst thing that would happen to them would be that they'd be allowed to have a ton of money and be given amnesty for all their atrocities. To world government advocates, though, this didn't matter because the United Nations was now running a country, a dream they had been looking for a long time, and which set an important precedent for future UN interventions in countries' internal affairs. Intervention in American affairs would come in the form of developing standards for our military, as a recent document titled Peacekeeping Criminal Justice Standards for Military Police and U.S. Marine Corps has inside the front cover a UN insignia and the title United Nations Criminal Justice Standards for Peacekeeping Police, with the statement that it was prepared by the Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice Branch of the United Nations office in Vienna. In the 1970s, the U.S. Army contracted with humanistic Sidney Simon for an experimental program to challenge attitudes and behaviors of 1,200 soldiers. And separately, in March 1978, the U.S. Army developed a course titled Psychological Operations in Support of Special Forces Operations, published by the Special Warfare Center at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Lesson 3 of which describes how to change core attitudes, values, and behaviors, and refers to humanistic psychology, Father Abraham Maslow's hierarchical process. On May 3, 1994, President Clinton signed Presidential Decision Directive 25, which has still only been released to top administration officials and a few members of Congress, and which strengthens the UN and describes how American soldiers will serve under foreign commanders. Could this all be relevant to the recent Combat Arms Survey created and conducted by Navy officer Lieutenant Commander Guy Cunningham, asking 300 Marines at the 29 Palms Marine Base in California as to their willingness to serve under United Nations command and fire on fellow Americans if they resist gun confiscations? And possibly relevant was this 3-week exercise beginning April 22, 1994, and called Agile Provider 94, which was conducted in several southern U.S. states by soldiers from the United States, France, and Netherlands and Sumerian, training in forcible entry, among other things. August 6th through 28, 1995, for the first time on U.S. soil, soldiers from the former Warsaw Pact held peacekeeping exercises with NATO soldiers. More than forcible entry, the Chicago Sun-Times, June 13th and 14, 1995, reported that helicopters from the U.S. Army Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, flew to 2 Chicago suburbs in a multi-jurisdictional training exercise at low level at night without forewarning the public. There was gunfire and explosion, windows and homes rattled, and an abandoned seminary was hit to give the pilots a chance to train in an urban environment, a Defense Department spokesman said. Perhaps in preventative peacekeeping, if American soldiers are unwillingly to forcibly enter the homes of fellow Americans who are unwilling to have their guns confiscated, foreign troops on American soil would be willing. Would this be possible concern if foreign troops were ever permanently stationed in the United States? Interesting in that regard may be the fact that on May 11, 1991, the Dallas Morning News and other newspapers around the nation reported that German lawmakers and U.S. officials reacted favorably to the idea of a permanent German military presence in the United States. An organization in the United States called Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership compiled a chart titled Major 20th Century Genocides, the Cost of Gun Control, showing that prior to committing genocide, Ottoman Turkey, the USSR, Nazi Germany, China, Uganda, and Cambodia all passed strong gun control laws. For example, just prior to Uganda's 1971 to 1979 genocide against Christians and political rivals, the Firearms Act of 1970 was passed. Could something similar happen in America? Founding Father George Mason warned, "To disarm the people is the best and most effectual way to enslave them." And patriot and scholar Noah Webster wrote, "Before a standing army can rule, the people must be disarmed, as they are in almost every kingdom in Europe. The supreme power in America cannot enforce unjust laws by the sword because the whole body of the people are armed." Or intervention in the U.S. could come through also UNICEF, which is now televising an ad here that ends with the words, "Every child is our child." Can't you just see a poster with a UN blue cloth, fierce-looking woman acting as the global nanny and pointing at the children of the world, saying like Uncle Sam that Aunt Uni wants you? Or global intervention could come through the UN treaties such as the proposed Treaty on Global Warming. U.S. Senator Chuck Hagel just got back from the UN Global Warming Conference in Kyoto, Japan, appeared on CBS Face the Nation December 14, 1997. On the program, Senator Hagel, who chairs the Senate subcommittee monitoring global warming, said, "The consequences of the actions that are taken, and if in fact we would move forward and ratify this treaty, are about our jobs, our economic future, our economic growth, international competitiveness, and national sovereignty. For example, at the first time in the history of America, we would be allowing the United Nations bureaucracy to come in, administer, and enforce shutdowns of industries, businesses, and farmers." Or intervention could come through the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Early in 1993, Rhodes scholars Bill Bradley, Democrat of New Jersey, and Richard Lugar, Republican of Indiana, among others, introduced Senate Resolution 70, which stated, "Whereas on November 20th, 1989, the United States and other members of the United Nations unanimously endorsed the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and urged national governments to ratify the convention and make possible the application of the convention as international law. Whereas the convention, if implemented, would help establish universal legal standards for the care and protection of children against neglect, exploitation, and abuse. The convention remains a force for improving the lot of children both in the United States and abroad. Emphasis added. The specific provisions for children's rights contained within the convention and which would be applied to American children are ominously destructive of parental authority. An example of this attitude expressed in plain language can be found in an April 12, 1982 Omaha, Nebraska interview on Channel 6, where State Senate, later Congressman Peter Hoagland declared, "What we are most interested in, of course, are the children themselves. We don't think that the member of a religious flock should be entitled to impose decisions or religious philosophies on their children, which could be seriously undermine those children's abilities to deal with this complicated world when they grow up. The combination of promoting socialism along with the world government, as well as intervening in families on behalf of children, is best demonstrated by Mortimer Adler, who has been a member of the World Federalists, a foundation of the Aspen Institute for Humanistic Studies, and a chairman of the Encyclopedia Britannica. In his The Paedo Proposal, 1982, one reads that the sooner a democratic society intervenes to remedy the cultural inequality of homes and environments, the sooner it will succeed in fulfilling the democratic mandate of equal educational opportunity for all." Membership of this paid group included Carnegie Foundation President Ernest Boyer, who in January 1988 said that schools should no longer be seen as academic centers but should be turned into social service centers, that school-based health clinics should be combined with daycare facilities, and that schools should assume the responsibility for feeding students all 3 meals a day since they would be in the school building from 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. And Coalition of Essential Schools heads Ted Sizer, also a member of the paid group, wrote in 5 lectures on moral education, 1970, that Christian sermonizing denies individual autonomy, which lies at the heart of a new morality, towards which we are to guide ourselves and other people. Clearly, the strict adherence to a code is out of date. The National Paedo Center, an outgrowth of the Paedo Proposal, was founded in 1988 at UNC Chapel Hill. And in Haves Without Have-Nots, 1991, Adler advocated a socialist world government called the Union of Socialist Democratic Republics, USDR. A brief